Have you ever noticed that there are a lot of words that when you go to read, you can instantly recognize them, but when it comes to speaking, you just suddenly can't seem to recall any of them? Well, that's your passive vocabulary, and honestly, for a long time, most of my vocabulary felt passive too. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you how I was able to finally convert a lot of that passive vocabulary into words that I could actually use. The first thing that I do is I focus on very few words at a time. Now, to explain this, let me give you a little scenario. So imagine that you are a student and you have not showed up for class all semester, and now it's time for finals. So you have a whole weekend to try to cram in all of the information that you should have learned by attending that class all semester, which you didn't. So now you're spending your whole weekend trying to cram a whole semester's worth of information into your head. And do you think you're going to do well on this final exam? Probably not, because it's just way too much information in such a short amount of time. Your brain cannot handle that huge capacity, and you're probably just not going to do well. So when it comes to learning new vocabulary in another language, it's the same thing. If you try to cram too much, you're not going to do well. For me personally, focusing on maybe 2 to 5 words maximum in a week is really the sweet spot for true mastery and the ability to actively use those words too. I do passively expose myself to a lot of words all the time. I just don't try to master all of those words. Something else that I do every time I'm reading or listening to the language is I always try to pick out just one key word that really clicked with me during that session. Maybe it was a key word that was necessary for understanding the topic, or maybe it was just a word or expression that I found really interesting and it just stuck out to me for personal reasons. Once I identify that word, if it was something that I read, I will try to read that sentence aloud several times. If it was something that I heard, I'll just try to shadow it a couple times, replay, listen to it again. And if I really want to, I might highlight the sentence that it's in, or I'll write the whole sentence down somewhere so that if I want to go back and review it or reference it at any time, I can easily find it. Now, every time that I read or listen to the language, there might be several words that I end up looking up in that session. But I know that it's not possible to take all of those words that I looked up in that session and go forward in the future and instantly remember them and instantly be able to use them. I use this goal of identifying one key word so that at each session that I'm interacting with the language, I'm identifying the one word or the one expression that would have the best chance of actually sticking in my memory. I don't really worry myself with all of the words that I'm encountering that I might forget later. Then the next thing that I do is I actually try to tie the word that I learn to some sort of memory. I remember watching this show on Netflix in French, and the same expression just kept coming up over and over, not just throughout the episode, but throughout the whole series as well. And that really stood out to me. But now I can remember that expression really well because I remember seeing it so much in the show that I was watching. And not only that, but it's so deeply tied to my memory of watching that show that now anytime I hear that expression or if I say that expression, in my head, I can actually picture the show that I was watching when I learned it. So I don't just try to learn a new word, but I try to also remember where and in what context I learned the word. I find that strongly associating a new word with a memory makes it instantly stick in my head that I will never forget it and I can easily recall it and actually use it later. And the last thing that I do is I immediately try to use that new word that I've learned. I will try to find a way to put that word into my writing practice. Or if I have a class with a tutor or I'm planning on talking to someone in that language, I find a way to put that word into the conversation. Even if it's not relevant to the conversation, I will find a way to make it relevant to use that word in that conversation just so I can get those reps in. This is also why cramming too many words in at the same time is really ineffective. If you have focused intently on 10 to 20 words, it's really hard for you in the middle of a conversation or when you go to sit down to write to recall these 10 to 20 words. And because you can't easily recall them, you can't really do anything with them, so they just become your passive vocabulary. You won't be able to use them, but if you encounter them again in the future, you'll understand them. But when you focus on just a few words at a time and you're picking them out from very meaningful contexts, it's really easy to recall them in the short term. If you only focused on 2 words this week really intently, then later you go to have a conversation with someone, well, off the top of your head, you will probably actually remember oh yeah, I learned these 2 new words earlier this week, and now let me try to find a way to use them in this conversation. And then by using them in the conversation, you actually really drill them more into your long-term memory, because you're not just passively learning and understanding them, but you're now instantly incorporating them into your own language as well. So when you only focus on a few words at a time, it's a lot easier to remember them, to work them into a conversation, and then internalize them into your active vocabulary.